So, it's been officially confirmed that Rachel Zegler is going to be playing the role of Eva Peron in the upcoming Jamie Lloyd-directed revival of Evita in the West End.
She thinks she should get paid more because she has to wear that dress. She should get paid for streaming for every hour she has to wear the dress. I mean, talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Not only are you being casted in a classic film to remake it, but you don't seemingly like your own character. So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
And now she's coming over to London. People have been questioning whether she is the right age to play the part.
She didn't storm off. She didn't quit mid-rehearsal. She was allegedly dragged out by security while the cast stood in stunned silence. Idiot. I've been as a young person in this industry who has no filter and no idea that's what insiders are claiming after footage surfaced from inside. One of the final rehearsals of the Evita revival starring Rachel Zegler, a moment so chaotic, so surreal. It's now making waves far beyond the Western stage.
To everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line.
The leaked video, reportedly filmed from a security camera inside the venue, shows a visibly distressed Zegler pacing near the front of the stage. Tension crackles through the air. Crew members can be seen huddled in the wings, one voice off camera. Allegedly, the show's assistant director shouts, "I said, get her out now." Seconds later, two security staff approach Zegler from opposite sides. She flinches, a brief verbal exchange occurs, mostly inaudible, and then she's escorted off stage, not forcefully, not violently, but unmistakably against her. While the rehearsal halts, no one moves, the music stops, and just like that, she's gone.
Rachel, you got time to find some autographs for us, Rachel? Rachel, please. Rachel, you got time to find some, Rachel? Maybe on the way out?
Multiple cast members have since confirmed that this wasn't a staged moment or part of the show. It was a real removal and alleged breakdown following weeks of what some are now calling creative warfare between Zegler and the directing team. One backstage source put it bluntly, "We've been walking on eggshells for weeks. That day the shell cracked. But how did it come to this? Tonight is the real beginning of my life as a young lady of America. Rachel Zegler was supposed to revive Eva Peron, not rewrite the backstage rulebook. What began as one of the most anticipated stage debuts in years has spiraled into walkouts, alleged power plays, and now security intervention. This wasn't just a tough rehearsal. This was a professional implosion, and the leaked footage.
Tonight is the real beginning of my life as a young lady of America. Of America.
Because when we pull back the curtain, the story behind Zegler's Evita experience is even more turbulent than anyone imagined. The signs were there, the interviews, the social media posts, the walkouts, but nobody saw this coming, not even her biggest critics. So how did the actress, once hailed as the future of Hollywood, end up being escorted out of her own rehearsal? Let's rewind, because this story doesn't start with the footage. It starts with a dream role and a sudden brutal collapse.
My mad existence, I kept my promise. Don't keep your...
Not long ago, Rachel Zegler couldn't stop raving about Evita in interview after interview. She described the casting as life-changing. She called it a tribute to Latin culture, to powerful women in history, even posted behind-the-scenes selfies with heartfelt captions about legacy and transformation the media loved. Fans rallied behind her, and for a moment it seemed like this might be her redemption arc, a graceful pivot away from the Snow White debacle and the Shazam mess. But then, almost overnight, something shifted. And then, because you seem to be dominating the world of musicals. You're doing Evita in London, right? Applause. Big Andrew Lloyd Webber fan. Right over. Was that your dad whistling? Yeah. You guys see Stanley Tucci back there? That'll be fun, huh? It's going to be the best time. It's my West End debut. I'm so excited. You've done a lot of Broadway. Yeah, well, yeah, I did Shakespeare for 20 weeks, which I'm coming off of that right now. 20 weeks of Shakespeare. Do? They say, like, the audiences in England are different than the American audience. I've heard they're more reserved. And I certainly didn't have a very reserved experience on Broadway. Oh, really? Yeah, we were in an 800-seat theater in the round. So you really are this close to your audience at times, and I'm with the biggest heartthrob in the world gone, were the excited updates and glowing praise in their place, cryptic captions, emotional silence, and eventually the blamed Zegler allegedly began describing the production as unsafe, hostile, and creatively gaslighting in private messages later, leaked to fan accounts. She reportedly claimed the environment was emotionally damaging and artistically oppressive. According to one source close to the production, she was overheard telling a friend, "It's not collaboration, it's control. This isn't art, it's ego management." And yet that same friend says those complaints didn't come up until much later after rehearsals had already started to go sideways. So what changed?
Then, because, I mean, you seem to be dominating the world of musicals. You're doing Evita in London, right?
Big Andrew Lloyd Webber fan right over there.
Was that your dad whistling?
Yeah. You guys see Stanley Tucci back there?
That'll be fun, huh?
It's gonna be the best time. It's my West End debut. I'm so excited.
You've done a lot of Broadway.
Yeah, well, yeah, I did Shakespeare for 20 weeks. I'm coming off of that right now.
20 weeks of Shakespeare.
It's a lot.
Do they say, like, the audiences in England are different than the American audience?
I've heard they're more reserved, and I certainly didn't have a very reserved experience on Broadway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were in an 800-seat theater in the round, so you really are this close to your audience at times. And I'm with the biggest heartthrob.
Some insiders believe it wasn't the environment at all. It was the pressure, the expectation, the realization that Eva wasn't going to be a one-woman vehicle, that this was a tight-knit, fast-moving production, and Zegler's usual methods just didn't fit. And once rehearsal friction began leaking to the public, Zegler allegedly shifted into damage control. The narrative changed. Her team stopped promoting the production. Comments on her earlier Evita posts mysteriously vanished. The once celebratory energy was replaced with vague claims of mistreatment, the kind that couldn't easily be verified, but couldn't be dismissed either. To her fans, she was speaking truth to power.
I stop for photos every time I'm online for the Snow White ride, and I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how often are you in line for the Snow White ride?
I'm a narcissist.
To theater insiders, it felt all too familiar, because this wasn't the first time Zegler had flipped the script, not the first time. She publicly celebrated a role only to later condemn it when things got complicated. Snow White, Shazam, and now Evita.
Should be a world in which she can thrive, but people don't know how to make blockbusters anymore either. Like, every blockbuster is bad. Like, blockbusters are flopping right now at a rate that we have never seen before, and this can kind of explain what's going on with Shazam too. Even though, like, again, Zachary Levi being a horrible person, that is also something that she could not really foresee or, like, have control of necessarily. But yeah, it is just kind of this weird thing where, like, a lot of things in the industry are kind of working against her with the skill set that she does have. If you think about other actors of her generation or, like, slightly older than her, they start with indie projects. The indie projects are good. They don't get too many eyes on them, so they don't get too much notoriety, and they're able to, like, kind of build their resume that way. Or they start in, like, TV. Something less high profile than, like, a Steven Spielberg directed West Side Story remake. And by the way, do I think she could do a really quiet indie movie where she doesn't sing and be totally successful? Absolutely. But just, like, as it stands right now, from what we've seen of her so far, like, she has a certain skill set, but there is a true lack of, like, I think, visionary leadership in Hollywood that knows what to do with that kind of.
But this time, the consequences weren't just digital backlash or bad headlines. This time, real people, castmates, crew members, producers were being dragged into the narrative, and behind the scenes, they were already preparing for a much bigger fallout. Because if what they were saying was true, Zegler wasn't just struggling, she was becoming impossible to work with. And that's where things really start to unravel.
You have a terrible audition experience.
I do. I do have a terrible audition
What is
experience.
it?
I was actually, oddly enough, auditioning for a Broadway show of a very famous Broadway musical that was having a revival, and the producers and directors were ordering lunch while I was singing.
What?
It was so
Like,
horrible.
actually, while you were singing a song?
Yeah.
Would
I
you-
booked
would
West
you-
Side Story a week later.
From the moment rehearsals began, the energy in the room felt off, not explosive, not chaotic, just off, quietly tense, like everyone was waiting for something to go wrong. And according to insiders, the tension always seemed to orbit around one person. Rachel Zegler crew members reportedly noticed it first. Zegler would often arrive late, sometimes by only a few minutes, but always with an excuse. She's feeling emotionally off today. She's journaling in the green room. She needs a few more minutes to prepare. To outsiders, these might seem harmless, but in a tightly in production like Evita, every minute counts and every delay ripples through the entire team. But what really raised eyebrows wasn't the lateness, it was the resistance. Sources claimed Zegler routinely pushed back on direction. She allegedly questioned stage blocking, challenge line delivery, and even rewrote choreography without approval. One lighting tech described it like this: every cue turned into a debate. It felt like we were rehearsing around her, not with her. Director Jamie Lloyd, known for his collaborative style and sharp vision, reportedly spent more time managing Zegler's moods than refining the actual show. And the cast, they started adapting, not in the creative sense, but in the survival sense. Ensemble members allegedly asked to be moved to different sides of the stage. A few reportedly requested audio changes to balance out Zegler's spontaneous vocal riffs, which some claim were completely overpowering. One chorus member described her energy as unpredictable. She'd either go all in or disappear mentally. There was no middle ground, and that inconsistency began fracturing the team. People stopped sharing notes. Eye contact during group numbers faded. Energy in the room dipped. According to one assistant choreographer, it felt like everyone was working on different shows, like we weren't speaking the same language anymore. Then came the rehearsal, the one where everything boiled over. It was supposed to be a full run through. The stakes were high. This was the first time producers and backers were watching from the seats. But just minutes, and Zegler allegedly stopped the show over, of all things, the lighting. She didn't like the shadows. She didn't like how her dress moved. She didn't like the color tone. And so she stopped. She allegedly refused to go on until it was fixed. The crew scrambled to adjust. The director reportedly left the room. And by the time things settled, Zegler was gone quietly. No goodbye, no explanation, just vanished mid-rehearsal. And for many, that was the moment they realized this wasn't a creative disagreement. This was a ticking time bomb. And what happened next? That's when it really got bad. What happened after that lighting dispute wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. And somehow that made it even worse. Rachel Zegler didn't return to the rehearsal after her exit. No call, no message, no explanation to the cast or crew. She just didn't come back. And in a production as high profile and tightly scheduled as Evita, that kind of silence speaks volumes. People waited around, unsure what to do. Was it a break, a creative reset, a meltdown? No one knew. But as the hours ticked by, the energy in the room shifted. It was no longer about frustration or disappointment. It was disbelief, because the lead of the show, the person who should have been setting the tone, had simply walked out. And that's when the director made a decision that stunned even the veteran cast members. Jamie Lloyd, the creative force behind the revival, reportedly stopped speaking to ZGO altogether. No more private notes, no more collaborative direction. From that point on, every instruction, every change, every update went through his assistant or the stage manager. It wasn't said out loud, but everyone understood what that meant. Trust had been broken in the world of live theater. Communication between director and lead is sacred. It's the backbone of a successful production. And when that channel shuts down, the entire machine starts to malfunction. Behind the scenes meetings began, not creative ones, crisis ones. Producers and legal consultants reportedly huddled in private to examine Zegler's contract. Was there a clause that allowed for recasting? Could they replace her this late into rehearsals? Was there even time to salvage the show? One producer allegedly requested a log of every rehearsal disruption linked to her name. Another called casting agents discreetly. There was even talk of fast-tracking understudy rehearsals in case things collapsed entirely. And then came the breaking point. During a lighting and blocking session the following week, Zegler reportedly refused to make basic staging adjustments. She argued with the lighting crew. She shut down vocal tweaks. And then right in the middle of the session, she left. No shouting, no drama, just walked out the same way she had the week before without a word. One crew member said, wasn't even shocking anymore. It was expected. That's how far things had fallen. The rehearsal space turned cold the cast. Stopped joking during breaks, morale plummeted, people showed up, did their jobs, and left quietly hoping the next rehearsal wouldn't fall apart like the last one. But deep down, most already knew this wasn't a revival anymore. This was a slow-motion collapse. And if producers didn't step in fast, there might not be a show left to save. Theater is a small world. And in the West End, microscopic word of Rachel Zegler's alleged behavior didn't stay inside the rehearsal space for long. It spread first through quiet texts between casting directors, then in hushed conversations backstage at other shows. Soon it reached agents, producers, and creatives across the industry. And the tone wasn't curiosity, it was caution. According to insiders, multiple producers began flagging Zegler as potentially high risk, not because of talent. No one questioned her ability to sing or act, but because of the growing pattern they saw forming behind the scenes. One director reportedly said, "You can work around inexperience, you can't work around instability." It wasn't just about Evita. Casting agents were reportedly revisiting earlier projects, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Snow White, even West Side Story, and looking for the signs they might have missed press events, awkward interviews, social media, blow-ups. The puzzle pieces suddenly started to connect. And that's when the phone calls started, not to offer Zegler roles, but to quietly warn other creatives. "She's on watch," said one casting assistant. "No one wants to blacklist her, but everyone wants to know what they're getting into." Another insider shared that her name came up in a Broadway casting session and was met with silence, not because she wasn't qualified, but because no one wanted to be the one to take the risk. Even rising performers, young actors who once saw Zegler as the next-gen icon, started shifting their tone. A vocal coach who works with West and Hopeful said they used to quote her interviews, now they're using her as a case study on what not to do. What's worse, this reputation isn't being formed by tabloids or trolls online. It's coming from within the industry, by the people who build shows, cast leads, and sign paychecks. And once you lose their trust, rebuilding it is a brutal uphill climb. Rachel Zegler's name is still hot, but it's no longer synonymous with rising star. It's becoming a question mark. And for someone who built her brand on emotional storytelling and fearless authenticity, that might be the most damaging narrative of all. As the whispers turned into headlines, Rachel Zegler didn't go quiet. But she didn't exactly speak out either. Instead, she did what she's become known for, posting a carefully curated stream of emotional, poetic, and vaguely accusatory messages across her social platforms. No direct references to Eva, no acknowledgement of the leaked footage, and certainly no mention of the alleged security incident, just vague artsy captions about holding space, healing through chaos, and choosing grace in unsafe rooms. To fans, it felt like a cry for help. To insiders, a calculated pivot. Because it's not the first time she's done it. Back when the Snow White controversy exploded after clips of Zegler mocking the original film and its characters went viral, she took a similar approach. Instead of apologizing or clarifying, she reframed the backlash as a cultural conversation. She spoke about female empowerment, outdated narratives, and the importance of progress in storytelling. The narrative shifted, the outrage softened, the press moved on. Now, the same strategy appears to be in motion, only this time the stakes are higher and the room is a lot less forgiving. One former publicist, speaking anonymously, described it this way: Rachel knows how to take heat and turn it into a hashtag. She's not reacting, she's rebranding. And it's working to a point. Some fans continue to defend her, fiercely reposting her cryptic stories and calling out theater gatekeepers for stifling young talent.